Alright, so today I'm going to be ranking every single Marvel movie. Every single movie in the MCU. Now, unlike most people that are doing rankings these days, and there's a lot, I'm not going to be doing it on that bar bracket thing where you put everything in the lowest level or the mid level or the high level. I'm going to be going through and I'm actually going to be ranking every single Marvel movie, starting with my least favorite and working to my very favorite. And this isn't me talking about which one is best. It's purely me giving my opinion, and since my opinion is the best opinion, this is actually me telling you which one is the best and which ones are the worst. Let's just get right into it, cause there's a lot of them and I don't want to be doing this video for 20 fucking minutes. Starting out, number 23, Guardians of the Galaxy 2. This is the lowest on my list because Guardians of the Galaxy 1 is so fucking high on my list and amazing. This one was super disappointing, and the only redeeming factor was I'm Mary Poppins, y'all. But God, I hated this movie. It was bad. Now, number 22 really isn't all that controversial, because number 22 is Thor: The Dark World, the second Thor movie that really fucking sucks and nobody likes, not even the actors in it. In fact, Chris Hemsworth has stated multiple times that he hated doing it and it almost turned him off from being Thor ever again, but you know, Marvel contract, so thank goodness he's still with us and he got to do Thor Ragnarok, which is great, but I'll get to that. But it also had Christopher Eccleston, which is the ninth Doctor from Doctor Who, a bit of a pleasure of mine. I wouldn't call it a guilty pleasure. I will own the fact that I love Doctor Who. And they completely underutilized him. I didn't even realize it was Christopher Eccleston until I went to IMDb and looked at the page and was like, what? He's an amazing actor, and they just used him on this bullshit? That's worse than The Incredible Hulk, which, by the way, brings us to number 21, which is The Incredible Hulk, which is pretty much ostracized from the MCU, but you have to count it. It is the MCU. It is the origin story for Bruce Banner. Even though they tried to scrub it of the past, even recasting and getting rid of Edward Norton and never once mentioning anything about that movie or the love interest that was in that movie, is part of the MCU. And it's bad, but it's not Thor: The Dark World bad, but I wouldn't really give it any points. It's still 21. And now we have a super bummer, which is Iron Man 3 coming in at number 20, way towards the bottom. They did my boy Tony Stark dirty in this one, and they gave him that weird Mandarin storyline that they completely botched. I'm not even a comic book fan, so I didn't get as worked up as comic book fans that are really looking forward to the Mandarin. But I know enough to know that was dumb as hell. So number 20, there you go. 19 is the first Thor movie, still way down there on the list. All the Thors except Ragnarok really sucked. I feel bad for Chris Hemsworth. He's shown that he's got a lot of acting chops and is incredibly funny, and they gave him these really dull movies. And we also got weird eyebrow, blonde eyebrow Chris Hemsworth, which was just disturbing to look at. Number 18, and probably the most controversial pick and number I will have on here, is Black Panther. I know this one is revered by everybody as being amazing, but I just really didn't like it. It felt like the scales were so small coming after all of these huge MCU movies that feature multiple superheroes, and I was at this point just kind of tired of origin stories. Don't get me wrong, I mean, Michael B. Jordan, Chadwick Boseman, phenomenal in this. But the entire third act of the movie, in that bullshit CGI fight at the end where they were fighting in between a train and all of it was horrible looking, and the rhino things, I just wasn't really excited throughout this movie. It just really wasn't. Number 17 is Iron Man 2. Now that I think about it, I actually really don't like many of the Iron Mans except the first one. The first one's great, started everything. This one had a good soundtrack. It was all AC/DC. When I was younger and I watched this, that blew my mind. It made me buy the Back in Black CD. Kind of got into AC/DC that way. It also had Mickey Rourke. It also had the I Want My Bird line, which, as you can tell, I am fucking dope ass at accents. But yeah, it's not a really astounding movie. It's okay. Alright, and now we're kind of getting to the point in this list where everything is either okay or fine or good or amazing, because it's the MCU. And to any degree, most of them, except maybe those ones that I just told you about that are behind us now, I'd watch any of them if they were on, you know? But this one is Captain America: The First Avenger, the very first Captain America movie, the origin story for all of Marvel, and the origin story for Captain America, obviously. I don't even know why I said that right now. Please ignore that. But, you know, it's a fine movie. It's nothing spectacular. It's got Red Skull and his origin. I like this. I like the whole montage when he's at boot camp. Skinny Chris Evans will always be disturbing. It'll always be hard to look at and creep me out a little bit. I will always wake up with cold sweats in the middle of the night thinking about skinny Chris Evans. But, you know, it's not a bad movie. It's not a great movie. Number 15 is The Avengers Age of Ultron. The second Avengers movie. The thing that I will give this major points for is James Spader as Ultron. This movie had a lot of fun moments. It felt a little bit too long in my opinion, but the opening was amazing. James Spader was amazing. Yeah, a lot of things about this movie were good. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this. I'm not really going to go into a whole lot in these middle ones because they're pretty good. But I pointed out the things that really stood out to me in this. Number 14 is Captain Marvel. Now, I actually didn't even see Captain Marvel until quite a while after it came out. I saw it after Endgame. I saw it after I saw the most recent Spider-Man, Far From Home. And it's okay. I mean, the origin story for Nick Fury's lost eye is pretty bullshit. I enjoyed the ending. It had a nice twist in there. I'm not going to spoil too much, but if you've seen it, you know the twist I'm talking about. Captain Marvel herself was pretty boring, though. Brie Larson was pretty boring. Fuck, is her name Brie Larson? Hot damn, it is Brie Larson. I got that right. Yeah, okay. Number 13 is Doctor Strange. Again, good movie. Not all that spectacular. I really enjoy Benedict Cumberbatch. The scenes of him becoming like a better person, and the very end where he's like fooling Dormammu and they're stuck in the infinite loop. I love that. That's beautiful. But at this point, I'm not too into origin stories. I know Marvel has like a dozen origin stories, and they kind of wore me out a long time ago. But again, I still enjoy these. It's just not one of the best. So quick. Number 12 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Number 11 is the first Ant-Man movie. I love Paul Rudd. They're very funny. They're a bit more light-hearted of the Marvel movies. I'm glad that they ended Phase 2 with, I believe it was Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think that was brilliant, just the way that they ended Phase 3 with Far From Home. Just these little more lightweight, fun movies, and I think Paul Rudd's the perfect casting choice for this. So yeah, number 12 and 11 are the Ant-Man movies. I think the first Ant-Man is just slightly better than Ant-Man and the Wasp. Number 10, and we're getting into the big hitters now, is Avengers Infinity War. The first part of the two-part finale to the biggest spectacle in all of cinema history, and probably will always be the biggest spectacle in cinema history. We waited a decade for Infinity War, and honestly, the only reason it's not higher is I'm still bitter that they made me wait a goddamn year for Endgame when they ended with the snap or whatever you want to call it. Everybody poof turned into dust. I spoiled that for you. That's my bad. But why are you watching this if you haven't watched these movies? Captain America Civil War, this is basically another Avengers movie. The only difference is that there's no bad guy, really. They're just fighting each other, and that's dope. I mean, it's like every childhood's dream. Everybody smashes their action figures together, and you're either making them, you know, making them kiss if one's a Barbie or one's an action figure. Although, no, it's 2020. They could both be Barbies or G.I. Joes. But, you know, most of the time you're just making them fight. And this is like living that out. And that's awesome. So 9, there you go. Number 8 is Spider-Man Far From Home. This was a really fun movie. I had low expectations for it because I thought that they should have ended Phase 3 with Endgame. I agreed that the proper way to end Phase 2 was with Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I thought that they should have ended this one with Endgame. But giving us this, what happens after all of that, is brilliant. And having us follow Peter Parker, who's almost most affected by this because he lost another parental figure, and seeing him just trying to distance himself from the Avengers' life, but it following him is great. And that whole scene where he's like getting fooled and he's like in a virtual reality or whatever and it's messing with his mind, probably the most beautiful scene I've ever seen in the MCU. Number 7 is the first Avengers movie. I watched this movie probably 60 times in a row. This is one of those what I like to call a background movie. When I'm playing video games or when I got something else going on. You know, when I was younger, when this movie came out, I was in high school, so when I was doing homework or I was just doodling or fucking whatever, I'd watch this movie. And this movie was a feat when it came out. They took all these big name actors, all these big name superheroes, and combined them together in the Avengers. We'd never seen anything like this on movie scale, and we didn't think it was possible until they did it in this movie, and it was fucking great. Number 6 is Spider-Man Homecoming, and I like this a lot. I might like Far From Home actually better than this, but the reason that this one is higher up on the list, or lower down depending on how you want to look at it, I guess. But anyway, the reason that this one is number 6 when Far From Home is number 8 is because this reintroduced Spider-Man in a way that I didn't think Spider-Man could be introduced. We had two other fucking Spider-Mans before this in recent years. We had Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. But Tobey Maguire was an amazing Peter Parker, but a shit Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield was an amazing Spider-Man, but a shit Peter Parker. But this introduced Tom Holland, which was the best of both worlds. It did such a great job grounding him as just this guy that's fighting crime on like the low street level, but wants to do better. And like he actually felt like a kid when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire never once felt like kids. And it had Michael Keaton playing another flying evil dark character, because somehow that became his typecast. But it was very good. I loved it. Captain America the Winter Soldier. This is number 5. I'm not going to go into this one all too much. The main reason is because somehow it bounced back from Captain America the First Avenger to make an astounding, amazing film in a time where solo movies, because they're doing the Avengers and everything like that, weren't all that great anymore. But this was great, and it surprised me and it surprised everybody else. Number 4 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this is another one of those background movies that I was talking about with the Avengers, but this one is to the extreme, where it carried on for years. What propelled it here is the soundtrack. This is, in my opinion, the best soundtrack of any movie we have ever had and probably will ever have. I had the CD in my car and I played it so much that it broke, and I bought a second CD to then put in my car, and I still have it there even though I haven't listened to the CD in years. But this is so good. It introduced characters that most people had never even heard of to a setting that was completely out of this world. And it propelled Chris Pratt to the blockbuster scene, which he so deserves. He's hilarious. You know, I love Parks and Rec. I gotta mention that. That's like my one video. Number 3, Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is my personal favorite MCU movie. Somehow it bounced back from Thor the Dark World and from Thor, which seems impossible with how bad those movies actually were. They were astoundingly horrible. But this movie was so lighthearted and fun and bright and happy. It had Thor and Hulk bantering back and forth. At the first time Hulk spoke, it had Jeff Goldblum being all Jeff Goldbloomy, and it really let Chris Hemsworth shine and do what he's good at and hasn't been able to show what he's good at, which is comedy. I said before and I'll say it 100 times. He's hilarious. I can't believe it took them 3 movies to utilize him. Number 2 is the very first Iron Man movie, the one that started everything, the one that relaunched Robert Downey Jr., one that launched all of the MCU, the one that they finished out Endgame with the sound of Tony Stark building the first Iron Man suit in the cave. And this movie is fantastic. They used the trope of fighting just a bad guy in a slightly different suit that they reused in like all of the other MCU movies. But it started everything. This has to go number 2. Without this, we wouldn't have the other 22. And number 1 has to be Endgame. I'm not going to say a whole lot about this. There's not anything I can say about this that everybody else in the fucking world hasn't said, because everybody in the fucking world has seen this movie. It is the number 1 performing movie of all time now, officially. It is the biggest spectacle anybody has ever seen in theaters and probably will ever see. It's the conclusion to 23 movies in over 10 years of our life. And they nailed it perfectly. They stuck the landing when so many lesser series didn't stick the landing, series that had less writing on them. It's so good. I get emotional every time I watch it. So there you go. That's my list. That is the official list of the best MCU movies to the worst MCU movies. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, check out my other videos.